Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a review and comparison between these two lenses right here. We have the Tamron 70-180 2.8 G2 lens for the Sony E Mount system, and we have the brand new Sigma 70-200 2.8 DGDN Sport, also for the Sony E Mount. Now, both of these lenses are designed specifically for mirrorless cameras, and I thought it would be best to put them side by side because they are very similar when it comes to what they offer as well as their pricing. Now, I said that these are for the Sony E Mount, but they are also for one other mount right now, and that is the E Mount Alliance. See, that goes nice here at the new studio. Now, the reason I'm doing this all in one video is to help you decide right off the bat which direction you would like to go. But there is one direction I need to tell you about, that if you are a professional, a full-time shooter, you're making money at this, and you own an A1, an A9 III, or any of the flagship models, there's no questions to be asked here. You buy the Sony 70-200 2.8 version 2 because this by far is much better than both of these right here, but it comes at a major price, and we'll get to that at the end. Now, if you're watching this a few years after it's released and you have a used A1 or an A9 III or an A9 II, well, that's a different story. But when you're on a budget and you're trying to figure out what your first zoom type 2.8 lens should be, well, the best choices are sitting here right now. I was able to shoot in 3 really cool situations. One was a college basketball game. Of course, that's indoors. It was at St. Joe's, where the St. Joe's Prep Hawks played the Penn, I think they're the Penn Quakers, and that's indoors in not very good lighting situation. The second thing that I photographed was outdoors. It was a football game at Villanova. Really nice lighting on that day, so I was able to get some nice shots. And the final thing that I photographed was a kid out in the park, because that's something that you would use a lens like this for. Portraits, some action, some general catch-all type of things. But like I said, taking it into 3 real-world situations and running it through its paces, this is going to be the video that you watch to help you determine which one of these is right for you. Now, the focus of this video are 4 things, and by 4 things there's probably more, but I want to hit on the feel, the focus, the image quality, the price, and of course the sniff and wind tunnel test. And let's start with the feel. Right off the bat, I mean, you can tell just from looking that the feel is going to be different. The Tamron, of course, feels much lighter than the Sigma. The Sigma is also bigger and larger, and you can see that right here. You've got 70-180, and you've got a 70-200. Does that extra 20 millimeters make a big difference? Well, here you can see the Tamron at 180 millimeters and the Sigma at 200 millimeters. Yeah, there's a slight difference there. Will that make a big difference in the long run? And I don't really think it's that big of a deal, but yeah, you get a slight little bit more reach with those extra 20 millimeters, and every millimeter counts. Now, the Sigma weighs in at 2.94 pounds or 1,335 grams, where the Tamron weighs in at 1.89 pounds or 855 grams. And since we have it right here, the Sony weighs in at 2.33 pounds, so it falls right in the middle. And yeah, the Sigma is definitely a little heavier than the other two. Now let's talk about the outside of the Tamron lens first. You pick it up and you've got 2 buttons. You've got one switch right here, and that's for your vibration compensation. You've got your 1, 2, and 3, as well as your custom button right here. And you might notice here a USB-C plug where you can plug in to update the firmware. But other than that, that is all you have on the outside of the lens like this. You have your lens hood, right? Comes off, bayonet style, and goes on and just snaps on just like that as I fumble through it. But that's how that goes on right there. You have a 67mm filter thread. Now keep that in mind if you are shooting Tamron, because they have the trinity of lenses that all have 67mm filter threads. It's the 17-28, the 28-75, and now the 70-180. So if you invest in the Tamron side of things, you're most likely going to stick to going with the Tamron lenses that you already own. Now on the Sigma front, the filter filter thread on this bad boy is 77 millimeters. When you pick this up, you are like, okay, this is much closer to Sony's top of the line lens. This is a sport version. There's contemporary, there's sport, and there's art. Art is the highest quality type of lens that Sigma makes. Sport is basically the sports equivalent of the art. It's the higher end because it's designed to go up against the top of the line that the manufacturer makes. Contemporary is more of the budget-friendly zooms or primes that just don't match what this one offers, but they're still a nice line to have. Now, in terms of the outside of this lens, you've got a lot going on here. You have a on and off switch for click and declick. You have your custom setting buttons. You have the optical stabilization, 1, 2, and off. You've got your limiting for focus, and you have your focus for autofocus and manual that you can turn off and on, whether you want to go autofocus or manual. You also have an aperture ring right here. Now that's similar to what Sony has on their lens. They have an aperture ring as well. I still think it's a waste of engineering. I know that some people say when they shoot video that they have to change aperture, but I really don't know who's racking aperture when you're shooting video. To me, these aren't the video lenses that you go out and get, but Sigma threw almost everything at this lens, including the kitchen sink, to include that right there. You have your custom buttons. There's 4 of them that go around the outside of the lens. You have your lens collar right here, which is not removable. It does have the clicks like this, 90-degree clicks, which we like when lenses have that, but this isn't the type of lens that you should be putting on a monopod. There's really no reason to do that when you're shooting stills. If you're shooting video, that's a totally different thing. Maybe it comes in handy, but you can't unscrew it and take it off the back of the lens like you could do with some of the older Canon lenses and some of the older Sigma lenses. I don't like that. When I shot, I had to flip it out of the way and leave it up top the whole time. Now you do have the Arca Swiss plate on the bottom that is not removable easily. You need to go ahead and unscrew it right here, which I do recommend that if I own this lens, the first thing I would do is take off this tripod foot, and then I would throw it in the box, put it in a closet, and never go back to it again. Let me cut in here real quick because I want to show you FroPak 4 in action on this photo right here, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn, which looks awesome, C41, we've got Coppertone, DeLorean, High C, Kaleidoscope, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, with 3 C's, Tintype, and Wet Hot American Summer. But I want to go all the way back to FroPak 1 to show you Skittles with 1 click, and boom, look how great that looks. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, we created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPak4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to save even more, you can get the Grand Slam bundle, which includes FroPak 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course, Skittles, which is in FroPak 1. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, Sony, on the other hand, they made it much easier for you to remove theirs. You take it like this, you unscrew it, and you press a button, and it's gone. Man, this feels light. This is the lens you go with if you can afford it. Woo, this feels great in the hands. We do have a review of this that we did a little while ago. You can check that out. That is linked down below. But now, you don't have the foot on there. There's really no reason to have the foot on there at all when you are shooting stills, so I would personally take that off. Now, we have the lens hood right here, which I already have on. Do you see this right here? Who in their right mind thought that it was a good idea to put a screw style lens hood on here? This is what you do on your 300s, your 400s, your 500s, your 600s, your 800s, your 1200 millimeter lenses. This makes absolutely no sense. Why? Because it takes longer to take it on and to take it off, and that's one more thing that can break, is this screw can come fully unscrewed, and then you're screwed. No pun intended. You're screwed either way if it falls off, and you lock it in. But my biggest thing with this, the design, when I put this on the first time, watch this. This is your zoom ring right here. Watch what happens to your zoom ring. Oh, we are now losing some zoom ring real estate because the lens hood takes up some of that real estate. That makes no sense. I don't know why Sigma designed it that way, but that to me right there is a fail. Is it a reason not to buy the lens? The answer is no, but with that being said, look at where the zoom ring is. It is on the outside. I do not like when zoom rings are on the outside, the furthest reach away from you. This is something that Nikon did a bunch of years ago when they came out with the new 70-200 2.8, and I hated it. And it's not just me, it's that when you put your arm further out away from your body, it becomes less stable. So the fact that it's not right here where the focus ring is, to me, is a mistake. Now, when it comes to the Tamron lens, there's really not much else here. You've got your zoom and you've got your focus right here, but it's in a really good spot. And the throw is super fast and super easy, 70-180. Whereas with the Sigma, look at this throw. I have to do all of that twisting to go from 70 to 200. So it's a much harder thing to twist. It's not super hard. You can't loosen it or tighten it to change that up, but you go all the way through. Another thing I should point out is that this is internal zooming, meaning it does not extend or get longer as you zoom, whereas this gets longer as you zoom. That means the Sigma is going to be more weather resistant than the Tamron. Now, for those who really care, we've got aperture blades to talk about. We've got 9 aperture blades in the Tamron. We've got 11 in the Sigma. We also have 11 in the Sony. So like I said, the Sigma is more going after the pros. I say pros, I still wouldn't recommend it myself if I'm a full-time pro. Myself, I'm buying the Sony all day because I can afford that and I want to pull the best of the best with Honor Sir, and we'll get to that in focus on why that is the best of the best with Honor Sir. But when it comes to pricing, you're not going to beat the prices of both of these to help you decide which way to go. Now let's move on to the autofocus, because both of these lenses do things slightly different. Now, when I was photographing basketball indoors, I was using the Sony A1. Honestly, I use the A1 for everything here because that is the best of the best with Honor Sir that they had out at the time of recording this, and that's going to give me the best autofocus capability as well as the most frames per second. Now, that can shoot at 30 frames per second, but with the Sigma and the Tamron, you're limited to basically a max of 15 frames a second. That's another reason that if you're a full-time pro, you don't want to skimp out on one of these lenses, because you're not going to get the full 30 frames a second shooting speed that you do with the A1 or the A9 III or the A9 IIs that give you the 20 frames per second. You max out at 15 if your camera can do that. So if you put this on the A1, you're maxing out at 15. If you put it on your A7 IV, you're maxing out at what this thing shoots at, which is basically 10 frames a second. So in that case, it doesn't matter. But let me show you an example of where that would come in handy. Being that I was shooting the A1, I should be getting 30 frames per second for something like this. We've got the wide receiver going out to catch a pass, and you could see the ball in one frame, and then in the next shot, let me zoom in for you, it's right before he catches it. But because it's only 15 frames a second, I'm missing the sequence of images that would have led the ball closer to his hands to make it a better shot. So in this case, I have the shot right before with the ball coming in, then I get the shot of him catching it, barely, just about, and then with him running down the field. That's one of those limitations for you to keep in mind. It's not all about spray and pray, but when you have the 30 frames per second, you want to utilize it. Or when you have 120 frames per second in the A9 III, you're going to want to use the Sony 70-200 because you just spent $6,000 on a body. You're going to want the best that you can get out of it to shoot those 120 frames per second if you're shooting sports. Now, we all hear about focus motors inside of lenses. Well, the Tamron has the VXD. The Sigma uses dual high response linear actuators. Is this a big deal? And the answer is yes. On the screen, you can see how the Tamron is focusing as we're zooming. You can see that it's much slower when you compare it to what the Sigma is doing, where it's focusing slightly faster. And then with the Sony on there, it's like you don't even know that it's focusing, because that has 4 XD linear motors, and that thing is blazing and lightning quick. And now's a good time to tell you, when I was photographing the basketball as well as the football, I kind of felt like as I was zooming, I was losing focus. Now, there's certain lenses where you can hold the button halfway down, and as you're zooming and focusing, it's gonna continually focus the whole time. Now, these are doing that. They're doing it, but they're doing it slower than what the Sony does. So in some situations, you might not be able to keep up with the action because the lens can't keep up with the action. Was I still able to get great shots with both of these lenses? The answer is yes. Did I miss shots because the focus couldn't keep up with the action from both of them? The answer there is also yes. I've been kind of spoiled by using the top of the line glass for all of the systems that I don't even realize what you get when you use the pro stuff versus something like this. But of course, it all comes at a price. So the Sigma is going to do a better job at focusing than the Tamron, but I still got great results with all of them. But of course, focus and everything else doesn't matter if the image quality isn't any good. So let's take a look at some of my edited RAW files from the Tamron starting to see how they look. Of course, let's start with the basketball. You got the guy coming down the court, focus found him, locked on, tracked him. I got the shots that I needed right there. Now, as we progress forward, I love trying to get a player coming across the court with the out-of-focus people in the foreground, drawing you in to the subject. And what am I at here? I'm at 153 millimeters here. Now, why am I not at 180? Well, probably because the action is moving back and forth and they're throwing the ball around and you're constantly zooming in and out. Now, like I said, the Tamron zooms much easier and much smoother in my opinion because it's a shorter throw and it also has the ring in the right spot. What I mean by smoother is the smoothness of going through this zooming range. It's just in the right spot to allow me to keep my elbows tucked in and not reach out like this, which ends up getting this arm flapping, and it becomes more of a strain on your body the way that this lens is designed, at least in my hands. Continuing on, we've got the Hawk. The Hawk will never die. If you ever watch a St. Joe's game of any kind, the Hawk is always on the sideline, and because they say the Hawk will never die, he's always, or they are always, swinging their arms like this nonstop.
Ask me about my winner!
I even saw a clip where the mascot got in a fight with another mascot, and they were swinging with one hand to punch, and they were still waving their hand like this because the Hawk will never die, even when they're in a fight. And right here, we've got the guy going up. Looks like he's about to get blocked, but he looks nice and sharp, and this is one that I nailed. But like I said, it was kind of a challenge when I was shooting the basketball because of the lighting as well as the focusing that was happening right there. Continuing on, let's move outside to get some football photos from the Tamron lens. We'll move into the Sigma photos after this, as well as a slideshow at the very end. So stick around at the end because there's going to be even more images that I captured so you can see what was Tamron and what was Sigma and ultimately make up your mind for yourself. I didn't have a problem with the 180 millimeters. Between 200 and 180, I still was able to get what I was able to get. Let me jump in here real quick and say, would you like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations? Well, if you said yes, just head on over to FroKnowsPhoto.com, look for the orange box, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I'm gonna send you that guide for free. Now, when you're shooting football, you may want to use, say, a 400 millimeter, but when you're just starting out, if this is the first lens that you have, a 70 to 180 or a 70 to 200, you can shoot football with that. You can get that action. You just have to wait till the action is in front of you and not try to reach out 50 yards down the field and think you're gonna get a good image after you crop. But this is sharp, this is nice, it's colorful, everything about it looks great, and I'm really happy with the results that I got with this. 1/4000th, 2.8, ISO 250. So that looks fantastic. Oh, this is my friend Greg. Greg is shooting a Nikon. Greg is in a very interesting position here, and I'd like you to give me wrong answers down below. What is this shooting style called? Leave those comments down below. Greg is a great photographer, and that's the only reason I threw that in there is because you can leave some comments about it. A couple more photos from the football game. This is right after the guy catches a long pass once again. And unfortunately, when he was running the field, I was tracking, I'm shooting, and the side judge his butt got in front of me just as he was catching the ball. So I have just as it's happening as the side judge is passing me, unfortunately, but I was able to track nice and sharp, didn't lose it at all. He looks great. Quarterback throwing the pass. This is all the way zoomed out to 180 so you could see what that is. That fills the frame pretty good. The background looks great. We're blowing them out of focus in the background. Of course, if it was a 300 or a 400, they'd be totally obliterated and isolated. But for what these lenses offer and for what this lens offer, I think it's doing a very nice job. The final thing that I photographed with the Tamron was going out into the park to photograph my friend's daughter running around. Now that's never easy trying to capture 3.5-year-olds running around, but it is a fun little challenge. and where I think this lens shines. Because like I said, if this is the first lens that you're picking up, because I like to think that a 70-200 or a 70-180 is one of those two staple lenses that you go with. A 24-70 2.8 and a 70-200 2.8, or in Tamron's case, a 28-75 and 70-180 are really a great two starter lenses that will get you everything that you need to get started. So the colors, the tones, the things I always talk about, the focus in this situation was not an issue at all because she's not running around a ton. She's standing where she's standing, or if she is moving, I don't have to worry about the focus motors because they kept up with her, and I didn't feel like I was missing anything out here in the park. The colors pop really well, especially when you bang it out with some kaleidoscope from FroPack 4 right there. Then I moved in a lot closer because I'm only at 70 millimeters here. I will yell at myself, I cut her fingers off, but at the top of the frame, her fingers wouldn't have been in the frame anyway because of the pole being the way that it is. But anyway, from a critique standpoint, I don't like that I cut her fingers off. But from a clarity and sharpness standpoint, it is absolutely gorgeous. And then the final one with her mother looks fantastic. So like I said, a really nice lens to have out there in the park. It did well for the basketball, the football, and of course in the park. Is it the best sports lens in the history of sports lenses? No. But I still got great results because I was able to figure out the intricacies and work through it to get the photos that I wanted. Now that was the Tamron samples. Let's move into the Sigma samples, starting with basketball, St. Joe's Prep once again, because I just shot one quarter with one, the next quarter with the other, and going up with the ball, he is nice and sharp. Now I still ran into the same issues that I ran into with the Tamron, where it felt like the focus was not keeping up with the players, and that is just how these lenses operate, and I was able to work around it. And I did notice shooting with the Sigma, again, having that ring all the way out at the end, I'm not a big fan of that, especially losing out with some of the lens hood taking up my zoom area real estate. Not a big fan of that. Again, it's not a deal breaker, but it's not something that I'm very happy about. I wish their engineers would have done a better job with that. Continuing on, we've got the guy going up the middle of the court. He looks good. The colors look fine, especially for 5000 ISO. Not the greatest ever since sliced bread. And a couple of more action shots. We've got a vertical here. This is at 163 millimeters. Action's always happening fast, but look how nice we isolate this subject from the background. The background blows out. It's not a distraction. And generally speaking, the mega zoom lenses are not going to be great indoors. Variable aperture lenses in low light situations are not going to be great indoors, and these are the lenses you graduate to when you don't want variable aperture and you want something a little bit more professional. And yes, a 2.8 all the way through is professional, whether it's a Tamron, a Sigma, or a Sony. They're generally going to be better for helping you capture the images that you want. And one of the things that I do when I feel like I'm doing something wrong with the focus, or I'm trying to figure out, is it me, is it the camera, or is it the lens? Because it's rarely going to be me, because I'm like the best ever. That's right, best ever. Comment down below. Don't comment down below about that. But I wanted to photograph the official, and the reason I did that is he's standing still. And if I can't nail that, or the lens can't nail that, then there's a problem. Thankfully, when we zoom in on the official, we're like, okay, all right. The person standing still is nice and in focus. So yeah, so good job, Jared. Now let's take you back outdoors to the football game at Villanova. We've got the coach down low at 70 millimeters. This is your range, this is your 200 millimeters. So we've got our 70, we got our 200, colors, tones, nice and crisp, nice and sharp, happy with the results that I got. Now, look at this guy running up the field. Look at how he blows up that defender. He just blew him up straight there, and you've got the guy in the background. He's like, yeah, you just hit that guy. Focus was fine on this, locked in. Where am I at? I'm at 200 millimeters, so this is the extent that I get. I'm sitting at the back of the end zone, and this looks to be about the 20 or 15 yard line where this guy is running. So you can get an understanding that I'm like 25, 30 yards away from where this person is. That's what 200 millimeter is going to give you. And earlier we showed you a guy jumping into the end zone. This is the guy jumping into the end zone. I'm locked off on him. I know that I have him in focus. I'm tracking him. I'm using an A1 for God's sake. But as he jumps, you saw that we lost him. And then we regained him. And I thought that was because I was zooming when I was focusing, and we just now know that it just doesn't keep up as quick as the Sony would keep up. So you're gonna end up possibly missing some things with both of these lenses, but you're also still gonna get nice results because you will get that focus to come back into play. I'm also shooting as fast as possible, and a lot of the cameras that you're gonna be shooting with are gonna be limited to the 10 or 12 frames per second, not the 15 here or the 30 that I really wanted. So out at football, I think both lenses handled very well. I really did like the size and weight of the Tamron, but the more professional build of the Sigma and having the dual linear motors definitely came in handy. I do feel that this one is focusing faster than the Tamron, but either way you go, I still think you're gonna end up with solid results. Let me cut in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I've been using for my personal portfolio at jaredpolin.com for well over 10 years. I've been using it because it's simple, easy, affordable, and I don't need to know any coding. To get your 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, let's get back to the comparison. Now let's jump back out to the playground with the little girl. Here she is sitting on the bench and she looks great. She's got the pink hair to match her mom's hair, and the tones are fine. The colors are fine. The sharpness is fine. That's why I point out that these are great lenses when you're starting out, because 70-200 or 70-180 is perfect for portraits. You don't need to have all of the lenses in your bag when you're starting out. This lens can do so much for you, from the sports and action to the portraits, landscapes if you needed to. It is a very good catch-all 2.8. And the final one with the little girl, just look at her going up there with all of those bright ass colors. Kaleidoscope certainly came into play right here, and this looks great. So I've hit you with the feel, I've hit you with the focus, I've hit you with the image quality. Now let's hit you with the pricing. The Tamron comes in at $1,299. The Sigma comes in at $1,499. You're basically paying $100 extra for each 10 millimeters that you get. That's probably not what you're paying for. You're probably paying for the image quality that you get from that. And then we have the Sony. The Sony, just for reference, comes in at $2,800. Yes, that is a very expensive lens, but this is an unbelievable lens that Sony made here. I absolutely love it because the first one was dog doo-doo. That's right, the first 70-200 2.8 weighed a ton, had trouble focusing when you zoomed. That was not a very good lens. And I think that's a good point that I brought up right there, Jared. Very good job bringing that up, because if you had the choice between a 70-200 version 1 G Master or going with either one of these, I'm probably going with either one of these right here, because I did not like that first lens at all. It had trouble with back focus, and I just had trouble with it. Whether I had multiple versions of it, they both did not do a good job. So as you can see, you could buy both of these lenses for one 70-200 2.8. But this is what it comes down to. Are you gonna live in the Sigma world, or are you gonna live in the Tamron world, or are you a Barbie girl living in a Barbie world made of plastic? It's fantastic. The reason I bring that up is because Tamron has, as I mentioned earlier, the 17-28, 28-75, and 70-180. If you bought all three of those lenses, you're spending $3,100, and you're in a great place to be as a starter photographer. Yeah, if you didn't need the 17-28 to start, I would start with the 28-75 and the 70-200, and you're great for years. Now on the Sigma front, if you want to go with the Sigma Trinity, you have a 14-24 2.8, a 24-70 2.8, and the 70-200 2.8 right here. That is a sport, and if you got all three of those lenses, you are spending $4,000. And yeah, those lenses, that Trinity is fantastic. If you're looking to save money, the Tamrons are gonna save money because the build quality is slightly less. It does feel a little bit more plasticky, but you're still gonna get very good results. And both of these systems are gonna hold up their value longer than variable aperture lenses. What I mean by that is when you're ready to graduate to, say, something more, you can still sell these 2.8s because they hold their value much longer than something else, and you're gonna get more money out of them. At the end of the day, it really comes down to which line do you wanna be in bed with. When Sony did not have a very good 24-70 2.8, their version 1, which wasn't very good, I took out a 24-70 2.8 Sigma. I also took the 14-24 2.8 out on the road when I was on the campaign trail with Bernie Sanders, and those two lenses were fantastic at a time when Sony didn't offer you something better. So yeah, I used it in a real world situation like that where the images mattered and they ended up in my photo book, and you'll never know the difference when it comes to that. But there are two things that we need to talk about real quick that are gonna help you to finally decide, and that's the sniff test and the wind tunnel test. This smells like the left side, and this smells like, oh yeah, one of those pink erasers from when I was a kid in school that I used to try to eat. I used to try to eat those. I don't know what the left side really smells like, but you think about that for a second. Wind tunnel test time! Tamron's the clear winner of the wind tunnel test. Tamron. If you were just waiting for the wind tunnel to buy, then the Tamron is gonna be it. And that's it. That's the review and comparison. What will you do? What are you looking to do? Leave us some comments down below with whether you're going to Tamron, you're either going to a Sigma, or you're gonna go ahead and go with the top of the line. Because as I said at the very beginning of this, if you are a pro shooter, you don't buy these line of lenses, you buy the best of the best with honor, sir, and that's the $2,800 Sony version. You don't have that money, you're just starting out, you're just getting going, you can't go wrong with either of these. So if I was to choose between which direction to go, I'm gonna go with the Sigma 70-200 because I would also go with the 14-24 and 24-70 2.8 as well. Stick around to watch the slideshow because I don't think you'll know the difference between the images if you were looking at both of them and didn't know what they were. That says a lot about Tamron and Sigma, that they've come a long way in both of them creating fantastic glass. That it even is a question, which one should you go with, this or the full top of the line pro stuff? So good job Tamron and good job Sigma. Thank you guys very much for making some great products, and thank you guys very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.
Yo.